a little step at a time.
Yes.
Try one thing. If it fails, it fails, or if it's not quite how you wanted it to be, that's okay too. That's how our events have grown to where they are today because we're highly invested in improving.
All right. Well, welcome to the Abundant Coach. We have an interview episode today, and I'm really, really thrilled to bring you this because you're going to get a behind the scenes look at Brave Thinking Institute events, past and present and future. So, how do we produce such great events? What's really behind that? But also, where did we start? Because I know that many of you listening to this, you haven't had an event before. Maybe you're just thinking about doing a couple-hour workshop and you're getting caught up in all the details. And so this particular podcast is going to be really inspiring for you to start where you are. So I have the privilege today of interviewing Heidi Simon, the director of events here at Brave Thinking Institute. Heidi has been doing this for more than 30 years, and her events and her design have contributed to tens of millions of dollars in revenue. But what Heidi loves the most is creating experiences that people wouldn't have anywhere else, wouldn't have in their normal day-to-day life. And no matter how big or small the budget, no matter how big or small the room, Heidi's real passion is making it feel intimate and connected and special for every participant. So welcome to the Abundant Coach podcast. Heidi, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be able to connect with you today.
Yeah, it's going to be so great. So I would love to go back even before you were doing events for the Institute or anywhere else. What were you doing when you got into the world of personal transformation and spiritual growth and all of the things that you're so heavily invested in and involved in now?
Certainly. Well, I started out very young in the hotel industry, and I worked for, sales and catering, banquets, those kind of things. And I got to a point in my life where I worked like 60 hours a week on a regular basis, 80 hours a week during the holidays. My husband and I wanted to have a baby, and I was like, how? I can't do this. How am I supposed to do this? So it was one of those serendipitous things. Went to a local retreat center that was striving to, network and connect with the local hotels. Had a tour with them, and during it, one of the leaders, she said, "We're looking for someone to run our retreat center." And I went home, talked to my husband, called her the next day, and said, "I think I'm the person you're looking for." And it turned out that was correct. And it was for a church I knew nothing about. But over time, I learned as I was working for the retreat center and running the retreats and all the conventions and so forth, I learned about the work of Mary Morrissey, what she was teaching, New Thought, what that meant. And it just called to me. So I stepped into it more and more over time.
Did you find that as you were around it, that your life started to change in any way, or did you get more interested in the content? Like, what was that like for you personally?
Oh, completely. It was interesting because I worked for the retreat center for 2 or 3 years before I really understood what the heck was this all about. I was not from my background at all. So it was a little at a time hearing, this talk and that talk, and we would bring speakers in, these Wayne Dyer, Marianne Williamson, Gary Zukov, all these different people. And I got exposed to them. I didn't know who they were until they showed up at the center. And I was the person who was guiding them on stage and doing all the details and making it happen. And so for me personally, it just expanded my mind and my horizons. The other thing that was a super big benefit and really helped a lot was that when my little boy was 3, he started going to the preschool that was at the center. So he was influenced by that teaching because of the positive preschool experience. And then I got really involved in the preschool because I wanted to be part of that. And from there it grew. And later I ended up running the entire children's ministry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So just step by step, it
Yeah,
happened.
opening yourself to it. I
Mhm.
love that. So there was a period of time where, and Mary Morrissey has been on this podcast and talked about this period of time. So that's a good reference episode for anyone that's not familiar with Mary's work. But there was a time when that big center that Mary was running, the retreat center, everything collapses. And there it all goes. All that hard work, all the love that was poured into it, not just from Mary, but from all of you. And then there was a rebuilding phase. And I think that this is really important for coaches to hear, because sometimes when you look at a successful company like Brave Thinking Institute or coach like Mary Morrissey, it's easy to think like, oh, how easy, how it all just worked out. When you're looking from the outside, it can seem like, they've never shed a tear in their life or something because they're successful. And yet we know that Mary sort of loses it all at age 55 and chooses to rebuild. So when you guys were coming back with a message after all that happened, I'm guessing that you didn't have a big event budget or anything that you could really do. So I'd love to hear just a little bit about how you got creative during those rebuilding days when you didn't have the big budget or the big center, and yet you still wanted to serve people.
Certainly, yes, that was a rough time frame for sure. Um, and so as we were coming out of that, and Mary really was ready to get back in the world, there were a couple of ways we basically, first of all, we focus on the message. The message was first and foremost. There was no reason to have fancy lights or big productions. It was, let's get Mary in front of people. So we found ways to do that. We found people who were interested in hearing her message, not just her ministerial message, but her personal message of what she had just been through and how she was growing from that experience and what she was learning from that experience. So putting the message first was the most important thing. We also, for a long time, held weekly meetings at a local organization, an association that had this room that you could rent it, but it was so inexpensive. It was a place that I don't know, just random groups of people would rent it out on a random night. Well, we got to rent it every Tuesday night for a very, very long time. And they loved it because it was regular ongoing business. And we loved it because it fit the bill. We could put 50 people in there and chairs that already existed. And it was a decent, very clean hardwood floors, but again, no bells and whistles, just Mary sitting on a chair in the front of the room, looking at whoever happened to show up.
Love that.
Mhm.
Love that, Heidi. This is, I mean, I think that's so powerful, this idea of focus on the message, because ultimately that's what people come to hear. That's for many people, especially like when we train and certify coaches here at the Institute, the message that those coaches are sharing about the DreamBuilder program or their vision workshops or the other things that we train and certify our coaches in, most people on the planet have not heard those concepts.
True.
And
Mhm.
how easy it can be to get like so caught up in like the Zoom and the this and the that, when really I love this message of focus on the message. That is the thing. So speaking of our coaches, so for those of you listening that maybe this is your first time listening to the podcast, you're not a Brave Thinking Institute certified coach, we give our coaches a built-in training called the Vision Workshop. And they can teach a 30-minute vision workshop, they can teach a 60-minute, they can teach a 3-hour workshop. So Heidi, if you were coaching a beginning coach on their events and let's say they were going to give a 3-hour vision workshop and they had a very small budget, let's just say a couple $100. Maybe they have $500. What would you think would be some of the elements that they could add into this 3-hour workshop? Let's do in person first. That would bring the Heidi element to it, the connected, intimate, special. What would you suggest for that coach?
Sure. Well, first of all, for location, I would really encourage people to look at libraries, local community centers, even schools. There are definitely places around that you can check out time. Sometimes you don't even have to rent them. You can also look at community, look at your community and what is it missing. Like my community has classes that are offered every 6 weeks or 8 weeks or so, and so getting hooked into that community where you can offer a class which could take place at like the local community center and then you build this whole rapport, and then you have a place to do it, and that doesn't cost you anything or close to nothing is really helpful. And then to make it personable, definitely I would suggest having, an exercise or two, something that makes people laugh, connect, like icebreakers. Those are really awesome. And if you come up with one sort of signature item that means something, it doesn't
Mm.
have to be cost a lot of money. For example, at one of the events that we did for a while, we had a Gumby. If you remember Gumby, the
Oh,
little
yeah, I
green
remember
guy.
Gumby. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Gumby is very flexible because he doesn't have any bones, right? And so, there was a whole teaching around that. And so, as a surprise and delight, we gave everyone a Gumby, like a little guy about this big, and they loved Gumby. Like, it was amazing how excited they were over Gumby, and it really was not much at all. But what I wanna really, you know, impart is that it's not about the cost of something or how fancy it is, it's about the meaning behind it. So if you connect it to the teaching and you give it a meaning, and then the third element is you present it in a way that makes it special. So, either put it in a little bag or put it at the front of the room on, like, an altar, make, like, an altar space and have them come up, or, if you have friends who are helping you volunteering, have them carry it in and hand it down the row. It's about, like, the presentation of it. So, the meaning and the teaching and then the presentation can make a $1.50 item turn into something super important that they carry with them for even years.
That's such a great point. No one knows how to do this as well as you guys have created this. I mean, I'm looking around this office, and there's so many things like this hourglass and other things that have been very meaningful. So when Heidi's saying tie
Mhm.
it to the teaching, there's all sorts of low cost ways that you can tie it to whatever you're teaching to really connect the people in. Actually, um, I don't know why I put on this necklace. I never wear this necklace. So for those of you who are listening and you're not able to see the video, it's a little silver heart, and it says, you can't see it on the screen, but it says B with a BE. And inspired by Heidi and what the team does, I was once hosting something for clients. And so I started to have them these silver necklaces made with one word. And then the texture of the necklace matches whatever the word is. So the very first one we did, Heidi, you'll love to hear this probably, is Mary has a quote that she shares from the Talmud, which is, over every blade of grass is an angel whispering, grow. So for my very first client gift, I created these silver necklaces, which it was shaped like a blade of grass, and it said grow on it. And so it was just like this really special, like, oh my gosh. And so people loved them so much that over time I would do a different word on a different shaped necklace, over the course of many, many events. So the clients who were with me forever, they have a necklace and there's like 10,
Aw,
charms or whatever with all the
yeah.
different words on it. And so just to add on to what Heidi's saying, it's the thought, the message, the specialness. But going back to my earliest workshops, I remember Heidi at my very first event I did with you guys, something called DreamBuilder Live. And when we walked in, this is 2018, just to presence your mind around it, Heidi. This is January 2018, Los Angeles Airport Marriott.
Got it. Okay.
And when we went into the room, there was a workbook and a pen. And it was like branded and beautiful. And there were page numbers and quotes and all sorts of
Mhm.
things. So when I had my first workshop, I'm like, okay, I might not be able to, at the levels of fact with my budget, brand a notebook, but I went to the dollar store and I got little $1 notebooks that were pretty and $1
Mhm.
pens, and I put it on everyone's chair. And I had people years later be like, I still have that notebook from the workshop that you did.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
So doesn't matter the cost. Totally great advice, Heidi. Now let's move to virtual. If coaches are doing webinars, is there anything that they can do to still make the participant feel special in a webinar setting, or that intimate, connected feeling like you're talking about?
Sure. So I think, like, for example, one thing that the presenter can do is really call people by their name. That makes a big connection, helps them to feel that they are seen. Another idea is, if you're going to have breakouts, we one thing you can do inside of like a Zoom setting or something, and you have breakouts, would be that you have, we call them a room leader, but you have somebody who's in that space who comes on camera, who supports them in the case that they have any challenges getting into their breakout rooms, they don't know where to go. And if for some reason they just can't technologically get into that space, the room leader goes through the experience with them. So it's somebody again to see them, to connect with them, talk with them, and assure them that everything's a okay. And even if they can't figure out the technology, it's all gonna, let's focus on the teaching again, the training. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
That's another thing you can do. So yeah, I would say those are kind of the two things that are coming to my mind at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. So, a room leader is basically someone that just helps the participants to feel like it's all going to work out and they've got tips and things and all sorts of things. That's really helpful. So let's go back to the way back. I don't know when this would have been, but one of our most signature events here at Brave Thinking Institute is DreamBuilder Live. It's how I got first involved in the Institute. I'm so grateful
Mhm.
for my first DreamBuilder Live. So, do you remember when the very first DreamBuilder Live was?
Oh, that's a good
I'm putting you
question.
on the spot now.
Um, So let me think. Let me think. So DreamBuilder Live evolved out of another 3-day training that we were doing.
Was
When
it
we
Day Full of Dollars?
No, it was called Miracle Mastery.
Oh, Miracle Mastery. Okay.
Miracle Mastery was a 3-day training that we did, and so it then shifted to DreamBuilder Live, and we revamped the whole thing. And so I'm gonna guess that it was about 2013 ish that happened.
When it shifted to DreamBuilder Live.
Yes, yes.
And so let's go back earlier. Let's go back to Miracle Mastery. And when you were running some of those first events, because we have a lot of coaches right now who are just having their first full day event or their first hotel status event or those kind of things. So, what were some of the things in those early days when probably there wasn't as huge a budget and all those things that you guys did to make it fun, exciting? How did you look for venues? Like, take us back if you'd be willing.
Oh, sure, definitely. Well, I think the first step was really to find locations. For us, it was hotels that had nice meeting space, and that was we're talking about like we could have like 50 people or 80 people, and even when Miracle Mastery was happening, which was a larger event, when it turned into Dreambuilder Live, we had about 200 people. However, at the same time, we were doing other events, A Day About Dollars, and others that were much smaller. Like
Mm-hmm.
often it was like 60 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so in those cases, it was finding a location that was willing to provide us with the meeting space at a reasonable cost. And the key was for one day to offer a meal. We included the meal in with the price because the hotels, and still to this day, if you purchase a certain amount in food and beverage, they give you the meeting room for free.
Mm-hmm.
So then you have the value of the meal, and meals create community, they create connection because you have the opportunity for all of your attendees to take their training, to have a break, to spend time together. They're sitting there together, they're eating, but they're also like talking about what they learned and where they're from, and they're meeting up and they're like exploring ideas. And so that meal time becomes very valuable
Yes.
for multiple reasons, for your budget, but also for that community connection. And so that's how we started, and I still to this day encourage people. That's one way you can get started, at a hotel, at a nicer venue, and then you pass that cost of the meal itself onto your client as part of the ticket cost to come.
Love that. And that's really, I think, in a lot of ways, like easier than we make it. And in those days, did you have a production company with like audio visual stuff coming, or what did that
No,
look like?
so at that time we would have used the hotel AV. We would have simply had a microphone, maybe two microphones, like one for the audience chairs and one for the presenter. There were no special lights. The ballroom or meeting room lights would dim if we wanted to dim them.
Yeah.
We really didn't even have PowerPoints. We didn't use a projector. Um, the presenter would be on stage and would just do the teaching and maybe have some notes for some reminder pieces, but we had, yeah, no AV. Over time, when the room got big enough that it required more than that, then we started having some AV people come in and so forth.
That is so going to be so refreshing for so many coaches to hear, because I think what tends to happen is you look at Tony Robbins or Mary Morrissey or Bob Proctor or John Azaroff or whoever you're following, and you somehow think that you have to do what they're doing 20 or 30 years into their business. And it's so important for coaches to remember that, going back to Heidi's first point, it's really the message, and the other stuff can come over time, but it doesn't even have to. Like if
Right.
I, yeah, it's so great. So, and probably simpler. And
It's definitely more simple. Yes, it can be a lot easier doing it that way, and it also goes back to the personal, really being personable with people, creating an environment where the presenter can be seen, can be heard, whatever that looks like with the number of people you've got. You can even do things like change the setup of the room. Instead of having like straight rows of theater seats, you can make it, curved rows,
Mhm.
curve the rows. So it just suddenly feels more like they're connecting with each other and the presenter just by curving the theater seating. Or if it's a small group, you could do like a whole circle and have the presenter at the front with just a little table, some water, their pen and paper, their notes, and then they just talk to the group that's there. Another thing that really helps connect people to the training and the message and also each other is to do, exercises where they break up and talk to each other throughout.
Mm.
So that's a great experience because then they're leaning on each other for support, and you learn in a different way, and it makes it interactive. You definitely want to make sure you have interactive activities so that they're not just sitting there listening to you, because then that's just entering their brain in one way, and
Yeah.
you want it to enter their brain in many ways.
That's a great point. Okay. I didn't plan to ask you this question, but out of curiosity, what is probably the biggest challenge or wild thing that's happened at an event that you faced that you had to problem solve to correct?
Oh, fire alarms. That's the
Okay.
first thing that went off. I'm like, okay. Um, there's nothing you can do to control that.
Yeah.
However, you can be in very good communication with be connected to your hotel rep so that you can respond very quickly to them. You can find out what's going on. You can find out if it was a false alarm or not, that kind of thing. Um, Another issue as we grew, there were times when maybe we got really creative at the last minute and we decided we wanted to add something into the training. So that required a special gift or a training material that we wanted to have out. And there have been times when those things have arrived to the hotel space very shortly before they were supposed to be on stage or presented. So having a really great team is important, a very great support team. And
For
again, those
sure.
that can be volunteers. Many times it's volunteers who are there to help you out. They want you to succeed.
Yes.
The people around you want you to succeed. So they're going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Um, I'm sure I could go into others, but those were
Oh,
the
yeah.
first two that came to my mind.
I will say that, my very first workshop I ever held in person was in a very small meeting space. So it was like max 26 people. And it was like folding tables and folding chairs, nothing fancy at all. But my very first one, my four best friends and my sister came, because I'm like, I'm not telling this to an empty room. So you guys are coming, whether you want to
Mhm.
come or not, whether you're interested in it or not. And then they helped me set up like little finger foods and things to make the room look a little bit nicer. And they helped me clean up. And like, people in your life, I find, like, want you to be happy and thrive. And so if they can lend a helping hand, they for sure will. Um,
Yes. Well, your comment about the number of chairs reminded me of one of our biggest challenges, which was at a larger event, not a smaller event. there had been a glitch in our ticketing system, and we found out after we were on site preparing for the event that we had oversold the event.
I think
And
the
everyone
first
would
DreamBuilder
not.
live.
Was it?
Because there was a gold room.
Yes,
There's like a
yes,
special room.
yes. So we could only fit so many people, 866 people. I still remember the number, could fit, due to fire codes, into the main ballroom, but we had over 1,000 tickets sold. So, as an entire group, we came together, identified the problem, and then planned, brainstormed everything we could possibly do. We had designated who would be there to tell the people that they could not yet go into the main room because of the number of seats that were in there. We had another meeting space that was supposed to be used for something totally different. We turned it into the gold room, and we set it up as an overflow space. And we took all of our volunteers, we had 40 volunteers. They gave up their seats in the main ballroom. They went to sit in that room. We told them the issue that was going on. They were so thrilled to help out. They turned into like this cheerleading squad leading people to the gold room. We had a different MC in that space, someone who just stepped in, and he and his buddies that were there to watch the event, they turned into like our dancers in the room. Like it turned into its own, like, it became the party room. And there were even people who were in the main room, but then found out there was a smaller room, and they were thrilled because they weren't people that really liked the big room environment. So they chose to go in the smaller room. And then we had a few people in the smaller room that really wanted to be in the other room, and they ended up in there eventually. So,
Yeah.
I mean, like, it all worked out.
I think it goes into holding the vision. I think this idea that it's about the message first and foremost. And secondly, that there's people that want to help you. Like keeping that in mind, that you don't have to be perfect all the time. Like people do want to help and support and lend a helping hand if they can. And there's a lot of people that would just love to support something. So
Yes.
it's great news. Yeah, that's great. So speaking of Dream Builder Live, it's obviously a very life-changing event, completely changed the course of my life. And I believe that just those 3 days alone were so earth-shattering for me that I couldn't not be on a different trajectory. So over the years, what has been your greatest satisfaction or joy in watching participants come to Dream Builder Live? Like, can you notice it during the 3 days? Do you see people change? Like, what are
Oh,
some of
for
your
sure.
takeaways being behind the scenes?
Definitely. So some of the takeaways are, really, you can just experience the energy in the room. We Dreambuilder Live in person got to the point where we were taking it around the country 3 times a year in LA, Dallas, and the DC area. And naturally, based on where we were, there was different environment inside of the space because the locals who were there were different.
Mhm.
And some of them were like, "What are they doing? Why are they dancing? We have to hug each other? What is this all about?" And so at times it was like really like pulled back energy, like wait and see kind of energy. And sometimes after only like one day, they were totally in. Totally in. So it's like freeing people to be their true selves, to lean into fun, to loosen up, to explain, like expand their horizons, to energize themselves and explore new ideas. The energy in the room completely changes. And then sometimes just for fun, I would if I encountered a grumpy person, there's sometimes a grumpy person who maybe got dragged there by someone else and they didn't know what it was all about. My I would always put like lots of loving energy on them, and I would pay attention to them throughout the event. And I tell you what, every time, they were not grumpy by the end. In fact, they were doing everything. They were all in. They were smiling. Those people who some of them were super grumpy at the beginning, they were enrolling for the biggest courses we had to offer, you know? So sometimes it's the people who are the most reserved, the most held back, that with this 3 days, it just gives them the opportunity to realize there's so much more.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I was one of those people at my first Dream Builder Live. It's like I really knew that I needed it. Like a friend invited me And I was like, this seems like would be good for me. And that was before I knew that my husband was living a double life. It was
Mhm.
before all that, like 2 days before. She's like, hey, I got tickets to this thing. And I looked at the website, and full transparency, I was like, this looks kind of corny, but like maybe it'll be good for me. Like,
Yeah.
and she really wanted me to go. So I'm like, okay, I'll go. And then 2 days
Mhm.
later, that's when my husband came home and was like, I don't think you're my dream girl.
Oh,
So
wow.
DreamBuilder Live became this sort of bridge for me. Like, I knew something
Mm.
was coming to support me. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if I could fully trust it, but I knew there was this date on the calendar in January where I
Mhm.
was going to get to focus on my life. And so it became like this countdown. All right, if I can just get myself to DreamBuilder Live, like maybe it'll
Right,
help
right.
me. And then I
Mhm.
got there, and then when I saw the Energizer, I was like, maybe I've made a terrible mistake because
Oh, no.
I was like, I do not want to dance. Why is everybody so happy? I was one of those super skeptical people. And then by the end, I was like dancing, raising up my arms and, everything. But I think if people can just find that little bit of trust, like maybe there's something more for me. And I'm willing to put up with whatever seems weird at first, whether it's dancing or hugging or people seeming too happy. If I can just open my mind and get through that beginning part and be brave enough to show up, I think that the transformation that's available is you will never be the same again.
Yes,
That's
totally. And even for the people who come back over and over again, they're never the same again as well,
that's right.
because they come as a different person and then they leave as a different person. And your dreams are continually evolving and growing and changing. So even when you have had success and you have stepped into it, when you come back over and over again, you're providing yourself with the opportunity to then grow more.
Yes. That's so true. That's so true. Um, can you tell us what you think is the value for coaches or people who are aspiring coaches? Why would they want to attend Dream Builder Live? It's not necessarily training for coaches, but why do you, in your eyes, Heidi, is it so valuable for coaches to attend?
Yeah, totally. This is a great question. So it's twofold. The first is the more you improve your own self, enhance your own personal transformation, the better coach you'll become.
Yes.
And the second is what you're watching are master coaches in action.
Mm,
So you have the opportunity to look at Dream Builder Live and experience it from two different standpoints. There's your own heart and your own dreams and your own mind and how you're growing and evolving. But you also have the opportunity to look at it from the perspective of, okay, these are master coaches and they're on stage and they're coaching people in the audience. And if I watch what they're doing and I watch how they're answering the questions and I watch how they're maybe taking a certain kind of energy and changing it, or sometimes they're flat out saying, why are you thinking that way? Let's stop this, let's change it. Like, that's your paradigm, or that's what you learned as a child, or whatever it is. And so it's really awesome because from my perspective it's twofold. You're getting both sides at the same time.
yeah, you're getting your own personal transformation, but then also it's like we say sometimes at the Institute, if you were a painter, wouldn't you want to sit at Picasso's feet and watch him paint? And so it's like if you're going to watch Mary Morrissey and the faculty on stage at Dream Builder Live, like you're watching master coaches coach and just the tidbits you can get, even like the way that they tell stories. That's the other thing that I'm like so impressed by the Institute is I had never really been to a personal development event. I had seen keynote speakers at other events, but I'd never
Mhm.
been to like an immersive event before I went to Dream Builder Live. And so I'm very spoiled because the main speakers that I've seen are Brave Thinking Institute and faculty. And
Mhm.
it's a different level of storytelling and inspiration and things like that. So I've gone to other events after that and it sort of falls flat because there isn't all the, um,
Yeah,
there's
I
just not as much
understand.
transformation. So I think even just being able to watch the way the whole event takes place together can really help a
Mhm.
beginning coach go, oh, this is how you help people transform.
Right, I was just thinking of, like, the actual one-on-one coaching piece of it, but like you said, it's about the storytelling, it's about also the event itself and how do they weave it all together, we do what we call energizers, why do they do energizers? Or what could I do if I'm not really that kind of a person? Well, maybe I could do something similar, but that fits me better. that fits my clients better, that would get them engaged, engage their mind, engage their body. It's watching that side of it too. I mean, okay, so basically every coach just has to come because
Yeah.
there's no better way to experience and learn on all these different levels at one time.
Yes. I mean, even going back to what I said earlier about, oh, I noticed you guys gave out a notebook. And here's my advice for coaches is you don't want to look at DreamBuilder Live now, whether you attend virtually or in person and go, oh, I have to do that tomorrow. But there's little bits and pieces that anybody can do. So going back to the example of I walk in my first DreamBuilder Live and there's a notebook on this chair and a pen. Okay, well, I might not be able to brand it or do whatever, but I could go to the dollar store. So like there's a version of it that anyone can do. So keeping our eyes open to like, what's my version of this?
Right. And also like a little step at a time. Try one thing and be willing to, if it fails, it fails, or if it's not quite how you wanted it to be, that's okay too. That's how our events have grown to where they are today because we're highly invested in improving. So we
Mm,
have what we call a debrief document, and all of the staff who are working the event have access to the document, and we all put ideas down for things that we would love to be better or different, what things that went really well, new things we tried, did they work or not work. And so we literally do that at every single event, and then we go back and we review those notes and we make changes. We decide, of all these different ideas, what would we love to do this time. And so it's an 100% commitment to interest and growth.
yes, absolutely.
And that's how we've gotten to where we are. Like like you said, there was in the beginning, there were no fancy lights, there
Yeah.
was no pipe and drape, there was no LCD, no projector. It was just a presenter and a mic in a small room with, maybe 40 to 60 people. And then over time, it just grew and grew and grew a little by little by little. So take the step that you can take.
And that is so comforting. Like that's just so comforting to know like you guys didn't even have a what do you call it? A projector. Like you
Right.
just started. And I think a lot of coaches like build themselves up to thinking it has to be so fancy when it really doesn't. Um, I'm curious, Heidi, if you remember a time when something didn't go so well or you had an event and it didn't produce the result you wanted, that how do you as the event director, the person in charge of the look, the feel, if it didn't go as well or you got some feedback you didn't love, how do you hold that spiritually within yourself and not let it get you down?
Um, well, I guess the great news is with great planning, you don't have many of those experiences.
Mm,
So you want to remember that when it does happen, that that this is not the end of the world, and that it's not going to happen again if you take the time to learn from it.
mm,
So there were times when we thought we had all the product there, and then we handed it out and we were short. Or there were times when, you know, um, I had something in my head, but then it went out. Anyway, there's times when things happen,
yeah,
and they happen. And after the fact, you're bummed, right? Because you wanted it to be great, and then it wasn't as great as you wanted it to be for whatever reason. So for me, it's about just taking the opportunity to acknowledge like the feelings of, oh, that didn't turn out wonderfully the way that I wanted it to. It's working with your teammates as well because they also will have energy and feelings around it. But then also shifting it to, well, what can we learn from this experience? So there's always that opportunity to learn. And sometimes you learn and grow in ways that don't feel that great. And as
yeah,
coaches, you know that. That's part of your coaching. And you just take that information and then you think, well, what can we do that would make this better or not happen again? And you I guess focus more on the learning than on the problem.
yeah. It's great advice. And there's always going to be learning. There's always going to be learning in every event. I mean, the amazing thing is, like, we just finished our 33rd coach certification training. And when Heidi's talking about this debrief document, there's still new ideas. And it's like, how does after 33 times of a similar event, there still be new ideas? It's like it's infinite, the level of possibilities and growth and learning and what you can create. So you're never going to be like
Mhm.
done planning your events.
Well, unless you're stagnant, right? So we don't want to be stagnant. We want to be always evolving and growing. And at the same time, when you have a really great event and you have it really dialed in, then the things that you're changing are up levels.
Yeah.
They're like creative ideas, up levels, things that make it even better. But if they didn't happen, it would still be a wonderful event.
Yes. Yes. I think that's the great news is once you do, like, once you're, for those Brave Thinking Institute certified coaches, you have our vision workshop. Or for those of you who aren't certified at the Institute, but you've got something dialed in, you do a webinar or some sort of thing. Once you do it enough times, the rehearsing and the planning and all of that, it just goes down and down and down till it's not as big of a lift as it was the first or second time. And so that
Mhm.
feels really good when you've just can ride on the waves of what you've already done a little bit. That feels really good. So, in your opinion, Heidi, why should a coach, even if they're beginning and they are going to rent the library room or whatever it's going to be for their first events, why should they consider having an event, not just for their own growth, but just a good business move? Like, what is important about events for a coaching business?
Well, many things. First thing that comes to my mind is networking and connecting with the community that you're in. So as you network, you don't know who's going to come to your event, but it might be somebody who becomes your next client. But it might be somebody who, because they came, then they might know somebody who says, we would love to have a presenter like you come to our business. Could you come and do this training or a similar one at our business? And then from there it can lead to something else.
Yes.
So a big part of it is not just getting the message out, but also the networking piece of it,
Yes.
for sure. And then there's just things that can happen in person that can't happen virtually. As much as we strive to make virtual as wonderful, and it is wonderful, there's so much good in it, but there's that connectedness that happens in person, that's just really special. And when you meet people face to face, you often create deeper relationships. So it's about creating those relationships. And it's about practice too. The more you do it, the more you're practicing, the more you are practicing your workshop, you're nuancing it, you're getting better and better. So I think that's really valuable for coaches as well.
Yeah, definitely. And what a great world we live in as coaches that you can do in-person workshops, you can do online workshops, you can do everything in person, you can do everything online, you can do a mix of both. Like it's such an easier world. Even, I mean, I know a lot of times coaches will think like, well, there's more competition because there's more coaches online. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of competition for a heart-centered professional coach.
Right.
I have found in my time networking and building business, like if you're really showing up like Mary Morrissey shows up, or like you've got heart and you care about people, like that actually still is a rarity, unfortunately. And so when you show up, that really stands out. If you're a heart-centered coach, if you really care about people, but it is easier to get the word out than ever before. You can create great videos on your phone. You can have a free Zoom account and record things. Like there's just, the world is sort of your oyster as a coach nowadays. It really makes it easier in a lot of ways to
Yeah, there's a
have an
lot of
event.
technology. A lot of
Yeah.
technology that really supports anyone who's working virtually, or bringing people together. That's really awesome. And I will say though, one thing about virtual events that is so awesome is the fact that there are people who, for whatever physical limitation or any monetary limitation at the time, can't come to an in-person event. So the virtual element allows us to reach those people who are in their homes, who aren't as able to move around this world in the same way, or who are farther, much farther away. So your reach can be as broad as you want it to be virtually. So while you're building your local business, in person, you can also be doing online elements that expand your reach way beyond your local community as well. So it's really an awesome blending of both worlds.
Yes. I would actually recommend that for coaches, because what I find is when you get in person to start, you can just build such faster trust. It's easier. It doesn't cost a lot of money to get out there and meet people. And when COVID happened for my coaching business, which was primarily an in-person business, the first time I did a webinar online, everybody that came was local. Like they all lived within probably 2 hours
Oh,
of me, but it was COVID and we couldn't meet together.
right.
And so the first group was local people coming on Zoom with me, and then people would hear about it, and then it would grow from there. So they can serve each other. Like they can really
Hmm.
certainly serve each other.
Yes.
What do you think has caused Brave Thinking Institute to start sort of like a phoenix rising from the ashes of something that was so hard and so difficult to go through in terms of the loss of one business organization to the creation of Brave Thinking Institute, to go from these small events to now these giant global events of DreamBuilder Live? What do you think is the backbone behind that success?
I think it's the calling to do the work.
Mm,
I think that when you have the calling to do the work, you will do whatever it takes to make that happen. And that would be my encouragement for coaches, that if they have the calling to do the work, whatever area that it's in, I would encourage each of you coaches to go out and do that. Just take a step, take action. Do what you would coach your client to do, which is go out and take the action, because you can't tell, you'll never know how much good you bring to the world, but you know that you did bring good to the world.
mm. That's so true. I think if you keep the calling at the center of it, it gets way,
Mhm.
it actually, I don't think you can actually do this work if you don't keep the calling at the center of it. Because otherwise you get too caught up in the details and the Zoom links and the, whatever
Mhm.
else it is. But if you know why you're doing it, because I have this call and this calling's not going to go away, then it just makes everything easier. So we've talked a lot, Heidi, about this event called DreamBuilder Live, and we have a virtual DreamBuilder Live coming up soon that anybody listening can come to. So what advice would you give to someone who's maybe on the fence about attending DreamBuilder Live?
Jump over the fence. Open the gate. Knock it down. Like,
Get over yourself.
just sign up and come.
Yeah, I mean, and also like we're not going to pressure you, like we're not going to tie you to your computer and say you must stay, like come check it out. See what's here for
For
you.
sure. Yeah, I think, again, what would you tell your client? I would say every coach, if you had a client who came to you and said, "Well, I'm considering doing this or that," and you felt it was something that they could really learn from and grow from, what would you tell them? And
Yeah.
then turn around and tell yourself that same
Yeah.
thing and do it.
I love that. I love that. We are ready. And if you're a little bit skeptical like I was when I first showed up, it's okay. If you get scared of the dancing, it's okay. It's going to all work out and it'll absolutely change your life. Okay, so Heidi, I'm going to ask you a question that I ask every single guest that comes on this podcast.
Mhm.
If you were someone who was building a coaching business from the ground up, and when I say the ground up, I mean maybe you have your certification already, but you don't have a big email list or a big budget and you're just starting, what would be the first step that you would take?
The first step that I would take would be to each morning take time to be connected to whatever source you have and to brainstorm, what could I do today to bring my business to the next level. To actually set aside the time and to do that. So no matter what, you will come up with ideas, and then pick one and do it.
Yes.
That's my suggestion. Because just from that, you will naturally grow, and those ideas will get bigger and bolder and increase.
That's such a good answer, Heidi, because I think for most of us, it's not that we don't know what to do. If you really truly take the time to connect, like Heidi's saying, and write down some ideas, there's plenty to do. There's plenty of ideas. And then
Mhm.
actually having a willingness to take the action on just one. Mary Morrissey would say, baby steps will take you all the way up Mount Everest. You just have
Mhm.
to keep taking them.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yes.
Beautiful. Heidi, thank you so much for taking the time to come and just share your 30 years of wisdom on all the coaches that listen to this. It's such a blessing to have you. And just know that the work that you've done has had a huge impact on my life and many people that will be listening to this.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yay. Thanks, Heidi. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss a new upload. You can help our channel continue to grow as we invest in creating more great content for coaches. Lastly, check the description below for helpful links to the resources mentioned in this video. Thank you and have an amazing day.